Hi, I'm Brent-Anthony Johnson and welcome to Basic Bass. Today we're going to break it down as much as we possibly can, well, to some degree, about how our fingers are approaching the instrument, how our hands are being used to approach the instrument. Let's talk about fingering exercises and something I like to call permutations. Permutations are something I sort of just developed over the years, starting when I was a pretty young player, just trying to learn how to play the instrument and hear the notes. It's really important that we play each note with sort of a depth that we don't gliss through things. And the best way I know to do that is to simply slow everything down. You've heard me say things like, don't perform your practices and things of that nature. Do absolutely practice, do absolutely pay attention to what you're doing on the instruments and listen, simply listen, as opposed to watching. A lot of people learn the instrument through visual. And then when they attempt to do said exercise, they haven't really considered the tone they're getting out of the instrument, how their hands are attacking the instrument, and the note that's coming back to them to make this thing give it the best light that you possibly can, which is good response, good sound from your instrument. Because I think if you're playing and you're getting good sound, you just simply want to play more. So the first permutation, very, very simple. You've got 4 fretting hand fingers that we're going to use by and large in these exercises. And as I said before, on the right hand, I'm approaching it with pizzicato, index and middle finger, just striking the string one at a time. Every once in a while you'll play twice with one of the digits, depending upon what we're doing. But by and large, I try to just sort of play in this manner, where each new note gets a new stroke alternating the fingers. So the first exercise is very, very easy. It is simply playing one finger per fret across the first 4 frets of the instrument, across all 4 strings. It looks like this. And in reverse. Now this exercise is really good for learning the duration between notes. As opposed to cutting off each note, you want to flow into the next note. By and large, there are times when you want to play very staccato, which is one word at a time. And I think about notes as words. And sometimes you want to do that for specific usages in music and just for effect, that sort of thing. But by and large, when you're practicing, you can practice any way you want to. I like to listen to how one note flows into the next note. And if there's any different ways to do that between notes. So from this note F, first fret of the E string, second fret of the E string, which is F sharp, G flat, third note of the E string, which is G, fourth note of the E string, which is G sharp, A flat, going to first fret of the A string, which is the note B flat. I very rarely say A sharp, but B flat. Second finger on the second fret, which is B. Third finger on the third fret, which is C. Fourth finger on the fourth fret, which is either C sharp or D flat. Going to the D string, first note, D sharp or E flat. Second fret, middle finger, E. Third fret, third finger, F. Fourth finger on the fourth fret of the D string, F sharp or G flat. Going to the G string, G sharp or A flat, first fret, A on the second fret of the G string, second finger, middle finger as it were, third fret of the G string, which is B flat, and fourth fret with the fourth finger, which is the note B. Now, that is a great exercise to start with. There's wonderful ways to tell yourself the notes of the instrument, and that was one of the ways I learned how to do that. My approach was to play across the fingerboard as I just did. And then I would take my fretting hand and go to, since the fourth fret with the fourth finger was the last information I was playing, I would place my index finger on the 5th fret. In the case of the E string, it would be the note A. And then I would simply play the same exercise. And then play it backwards. And while I was doing so, I would tell myself the names of the notes. So now we're on the 8th fret of the E string, or the 8th fret altogether as we play this exercise. I would simply go to the 9th fret, and again, tell myself the names of those notes using all the inharmonic names. So what is flat, what is sharp? The one below would be the sharp name, and the one above would be the flat name. In the case of here, we have this note is an F sharp. It's also a G flat, as it were. So a good idea would be to get a fingerboard diagram with all of the notes written all the way up the fingerboard to tell you those names, and to rehearse them to yourself. Now, believe me, when I'm playing notes and I'm playing some thing, some fill or some bass line, I'm really not telling myself the names of the notes. That's not the thing that's going through my head as I'm playing. I'm actually listening more and playing information and using fills that are probably idiosyncratic to myself as everybody else does, and just trying to play the instrument. So practicing, I very much liken to, for those of you who drive and went through driver's education, they tell you to sit up straight, they put your hands at the position of 10 and 2 on the clock dial, and drive the car. Now, as those of us who've gone through that as youngsters, by the time we were driving, you're driving with one hand, you're doing this and that and the other thing, and probably some things that you shouldn't do. I liken that to practicing versus playing in a musical environment with other musicians, where the communication is really about the music between people, versus practice, which is educating oneself. Should generally happen by yourself, and those are the types of things that you can do to really enhance your musical knowledge and ability. So that would be the first thing I would play. Permutation would just be the differences between the digits. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. And so you can break that down into other exercises. I'm only going to do a few here. We may cover more of them later, or there might be a part 2 or something of that nature. However, as we have the first 4 frets of the instrument, and it can be a 4-string instrument, a 5-string instrument, an 11-string instrument. It doesn't really matter if you want to just sort of employ these exercises or just begin to think about the information underneath your fingers and the sound of one note to the other, which is very, very important. So the first permutation would just simply be 1, 2. Okay? And you can practice that, and you don't have to necessarily, by this time you're not telling yourself so much the names of the notes, you're actually just exercising your fretting hand. So naturally, the next one, the next permutation would be 1, 3. Just simply remember with these permutations that once you get to here, you don't play it in reverse, because that is 3, 1. That is a different permutation. So just make sure that the permutations are constant, and give yourself the ability to exercise that information as you're listening to, but you're listening to the difference between from the index finger to the ring finger. How does that sound? Do you have the same sort of musical flow as you do from the index finger to the middle finger? Or does it flow as well from the index finger to the pinky, which is our next permutation? Again, listening to the sounds of the notes, the shape of the note, and the tone. And you're just listening to those sorts of things. So you can actually break it down to this type of thing. sort of thing in between, as long as you start from a digit to go to the next digit. And this is a very simple explanation of what can be done. So naturally, the next permutation, as it were, would be starting with your middle finger on the second fret of the instrument. And again, you can play these certainly all the way up the fingerboard if you really care to. They're great exercises, again, telling yourself the name of the notes to some degree, but really listening to the shape of the notes and the differences from, like, say, 1, 2 to, say, 2, 1. So the next permutation would be 2, 1. The next permutation might be 2, 3. And naturally 2, 4. The next exercise would be, permutation would be ring finger, 3 to 1. Then 3, 2. Then 3, 4. The next exercise would be 4, 1. Four, 2. 4, 3. And that would be the beginning of a basic permutation exercise. A lot of these things can, this sort of thing can go to the absolute length and depth of your imagination. So you can play a lot of different types of information. You can play this, or, which was 3, 4, 1, 2. That's 3, 4, 1, 2. See? A great permutation exercise. And this can go, again, to the length that your imagination wants to take it. And you can use your plucking hand to double up on some of the notes, play eighth notes as opposed to quarter notes per, or, you know, play triplets and that sort of thing. So it's a really fun exercise to, you know, because again, it's simply practice. It's simply getting yourself into a place where you feel comfortable on your instrument, and you're using this basic information to tell yourself the notes of the instrument, which is very, very important, and how it comes into play with your basic mechanics, how you feel as a student and a learning musician. I think that people have there's a negative connotation to the word that's related to the word student. I want to be a student for the rest of my life. I want to learn about music. I want to learn about things I don't know how to do. Some of my greatest joy is sitting and being very, very frustrated, learning things I can't do, learning things I can't hear, and learning about those and breaking those things down. Once again, it's okay to be a geek. And there's nothing wrong with that frustration. In today's society, people don't want to feel as if they have to learn anything. They don't feel like they want to arrive somehow fully formed, fully mature, fully able to conquer anything. And so we sort of lose the learning curve with what this whole idea of becoming a great musician is learning. The great musicians that you admire are people who really sat and learned things. I have talked to many, many bassists, and it's amazing that I've learned how they couldn't approach a certain way of playing because their mechanics didn't allow them to do that. They really had to work on that just to sound like a basic bass player that they knew. Keep working. See you next time.